Muskegon Sports Network, along with my partner, Cal Van Single. We have on my right, we have Scott DeCamp of CatchMark Sports, and somebody down way on the left corner, an old mate of mine back in the day. We're together again, Mike Taylor, WLCS and ESPN and Mars, I believe, right?
University.
Yeah. So,
Phi Slamma Jamma.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to a great show tonight because we haven't had one, so we're due, right? No, I'm just kidding. But we're going to talk, as we normally do, about last week's games, and the focal point will be the playoffs. We'll get a chance to finally talk about the playoffs a little bit and what we think might happen with that, and I think we're going to have some fun with that and see where we're at. Let's start out with the OK Green, as we normally do. A game that actually was pretty close for the first part of it. We're talking Muskegon and Reese Puffer. The score wound up being 47 to 21. And Scott, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, like you said, they pulled away a little bit later, but kind of had their way by the end of the night. But they outrushed Puffer 342 to 87. Jacob Price, a sophomore, has had a great year. He had 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, 19 carries. So he had another solid game, and that clinches at least a share of the OK Green Conference title for Muskegon. So they took care of business. They can finish it off this week at home against Zeeland East.
And Cal, you had a chance maybe to hear about that game a little bit.
Yeah, I talked with Shane on Saturday afternoon a little bit, and he was somewhat happy with the game. Anytime you win, an OK Green opponent, you're happy with the win. But they got some things they got to work on, and they had too many penalties again, and that's one of their bugaboos. But they'll keep getting that worked out. I know they're not looking past Zeeland East, which is going to be their opponent this Friday night, and and they have the conference title. They want it, but they also have, as we all know, and most people listening, they have higher aspirations, expectations out there. Mikey?
Well, I just think they're just like you said with Muskegon, they're trying to clean things up for the playoffs. Eliminate the penalties. The missed assignments, things like that. So, yeah, it's a good step for them.
Yeah. Let's talk, and of course, they have Zeeland East this week. That'll be a nice opponent as they get ready for the playoffs. Mona Shores over Holland, no big surprise here. Thought that Holland was going to have a tough time, and they did 76 to 24. Mona Shores coming off that beating by Muskegon, so obviously they want to get the trains back on the track.
Yeah, and offense hasn't been the problem, generally speaking, and they obviously put up 76 points against a Holland program that's down, but 76-24, as we said. And Mark Konechny had another strong game, 10 of 12 passing, 167 yards, 5 touchdowns. 2 of those went to Dimitri Roberson. Demir Farnham had a couple touchdowns on the ground, but I think the thing that they're looking at is they need to kind of fine-tune that defense and get things figured out before going into the playoffs, because that, as we're going to talk about later, that's going to be the area that I think they really need to address, because they can score with a lot of teams.
Sure.
Are they going to be able to stop people once you really need to in the playoffs?
Right. Cal, your thoughts?
Defense wins championships, so they really need to shore up that defense. And if you have a running clock in the second half, you have to score often to get to 74. What was it, 74?
76. Yeah.
76 points. You got to score quickly to get to 76. Mike?
Again, my concern at this point in time for Shores comes down to the health status of Konechny. I know his left knee's been bothering him a little bit, so I'm not quite sure on the status of that leg, and if that's been a factor in his performance in practices or. But going into the playoffs, I'd like to know how healthy he is really going into this thing.
And, of course, they will play Wyoming this week to wrap up the regular season.
I'm curious if they have a Colby Trovinger sitting in there as a backup quarterback, because wasn't that who we seen, you and I? We did that Saturday afternoon game when their starter went out.
Right.
And then the next guy came in. He got a concussion like the second play.
Right.
Wasn't that Colby Trovinger that came in?
No, it was they had the third-string quarterback.
The third,
yeah.
Who was that?
Wilson was his last name.
Oh, Wilson? Okay.
Are you talking about against Harrison?
Yeah,
against
that
big comeback?
Yeah.
So they were down to their third quarterback in that one.
Yeah.
Don't know if they're that deep in the quarterback this year.
Yeah, I think I want to say Landon Tallman might be their backup at this point. And they've got, I think there's a Terpstra young man, last name's Terpstra. I think he's the kid they're kind of maybe growing for the future too.
So, and again, not to look past anybody, but you would think an opponent like Wyoming, that might be kind of what the doctor ordered a little bit for them a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. And again, we'll get to the playoff projections and everything in a minute, but
Right.
that's, they need to get right, especially, they need to get healthy, as Mike alluded, and they need to get things fine-tuned.
Fruitport Trojans have put together an interesting year this year in the OK Blue. They beat Allendale by the score of 22-14.
Yeah, that was a win they needed because they're still in the playoff mix. They lose that and they can pretty much forget about it. But I think that win alone kind of puts them on the good side of things. They were already kind of just squeaking in according to projections, and I think that keeps them on the good side of things. They got Unity Christian this week, so that's no easy feat or no easy task, I should say. So they're gonna have their hands full, just like everyone else has their hands full with Unity.
Yeah, it's good to see Fruitport have a decent year this year. I mean, unfortunately, they're in one of those OK conferences, and that's always a battle.
Well, it certainly is, but I'll tell you what, gives you something to shoot for, and that's and if you want to be able to compete in that conference, you got to get bigger, stronger, faster. That's done in the off season.
Gavin Reeves has given the folks over at Fruitport a chance to cheer a little bit, and done a good job this year, Mike.
Well, you can't be fair weather friends. You got to cheer.
Yeah.
Cheer, win, lose, or draw.
Right.
Support the kids. It's it'll be interesting to see how they do Week 9 here and how they prepare. And if they again with the new playoff format, let's keep an eye on that one.
West Catholic taking it to Spring Lake by the score of 41 to 28.
Spring Lake was actually up 28-14 in that game. And so, as you can see, West Catholic finished the game on a big run. And Spring Lake, I still think that's a good football team, as is West Catholic and as are Coopersville and, of course, Unity. So it's kind of a top-heavy league this year with those four teams. But Tim Kloska, the stud running back for West Catholic, had another big game. I think I'm not even sure if he played in the first half. I thought I might have heard grumblings that he wasn't playing, but I know he finished with 169 yards and 3 touchdowns for West Catholic. And Jackson Core had a nice game for Spring Lake, 7 of 18 passing, 167 yards. He also had a rushing touchdown. So it's interesting looking ahead a little bit because there's that potential matchup with Whitehall that we might see in the playoffs. And again, we'll get to that in a minute. But that's the thing I'm keeping my eyes on Spring Lake with is just to see who they might match up with in the playoffs.
Sure. Yeah.
I think West Catholic's going to go the way that running back goes. I mean, they have a good offensive line. They open up some big holes for him. If he can stay healthy, if he comes in the playoffs healthy, certainly if you see him on the highlights, he looks like an incredible running back.
I like Spring Lake. I think that program's really kind of turning the corner, and they're getting kids out for football again, and I like that. I like it a lot. So I look for good things to happen to them. In West Catholic, solid program.
Yeah, had a couple of down years after Roan left. But,
well, when he was there, let's
yeah.
just say Roan took him in. We had to get him up.
He drove that program right into the ground.
He drove that thing right into the ground.
He had to go run to the other side of the state, and
Yeah.
he's driving that program into the ground over there too,
We
right?
called the National Guard. We got everybody in on that one.
And of course, Spring Lake will play Allendale. So
Wouldn't that be a great matchup, though? Spring Lake and Whitehall.
yeah.
That would be a great.
I agree.
Yep. Exactly. We'll talk a little bit about the OK Red just as far as Grand Haven's participation in it. They wind up losing to East Kentwood by the score of 27-7.
That's one I thought they actually could get. In fact, I picked them to win. So I really did think that was one that they could get that one, but they didn't. They had a slow start. It was basically the Falcons' passing game kind of took things over. They outgained the Bucks 217-48 just through the air, and it was just one of those games that I think Grand Haven has never felt like they were truly in. And the bad thing about Grand Haven is, they started out 3-1 and people were excited, and 2-0 in the OK Red, which is such an unforgiving league. And so, but they're coming off this loss to Kentwood, and guess who they play this week? Rockford.
Yeah.
So that's a nice little. Hope you enjoyed your season. You get Rockford now.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. May I have another?
Yeah.
That would be like getting Muskegon to the playoffs, and even though they're not in the same division. But
Right.
My goodness. Yeah.
Right.
Wow, that's. And I'm with you. I thought they would get East Kentwood too.
Yeah.
So.
And Grand Haven here just a few years ago when we were doing the Power Hour, Mike didn't even have a JV team for a big a school as that was.
This week for them, it's like getting a ticket for a free ride on the Hindenburg. It's like, it doesn't sound real good, But again, Coach Farley down there, he's back where
Sure.
familiar country for him. And the one thing about East Kentwood, they've got a lot of talent there, okay? And it's the consistency or inconsistency that Coach Kimbrough's going through down there with those kids. And he's just trying to, play as consistent as they can, week in, week out.
Let's move over to the West Michigan Conference, and we'll start out with a game that we broadcast on Greater Muskegon Sports Network, and also our friends at CatchMark here. The Battle of the Bell, 34 to 14, and Whitehall got Montague this year.
They
Got
did.
the bell back.
They did. That was the first time in 7 years that Whitehall had wrestled the bell back from Montague, and this one was a tight game for most of it. I mean,
First
yeah, it
half.
ended up a 20-point margin, but that was all in the fourth quarter when Whitehall really pulled away. It was 7-7 a half, 14-14 through 3 quarters, and really both teams had chances in the first half that they couldn't capitalize on. They were both on each other's doorsteps, couldn't get any points, They both missed field goals, and so they both kind of dodged the bullets there early on. But I think as the game wore on, I thought Whitehall just kind of imposed its will, especially in the running game. They finished with a 279 to 86 advantage in rushing, but they also ran the ball 57 times to 26 for Montague. The time of possession was obviously heavily slanted toward Whitehall, and the rushing first downs were 21 to 3.
Right.
But part of this is Montague's game plan. They're trying to spread you out a little bit and get the ball in their playmakers' hands. So they're not always establishing the run, but they kind of, it's dictated by how the game's going. But I thought Whitehall, the X factor was Kyle Stratton, the sophomore.
Yes.
He had a great game, three rushing touchdowns, and I thought he managed the game pretty well too, and made some plays along the way.
Yeah, Cal, we talked about that Oak Ridge game with Whitehall where maybe Kyle Stratton kind of came into his own in that game. And definitely you can see that. I know Mike can talk to it in a second here about the first game of the year and kind of see the growth of that young man. But I know Tony Sigmund says he doesn't lack for confidence, and you can see that. He's like a veteran out there already.
Yeah.
And a key before I turn it over to you on your comments on it is I do remember we were talking about when Whitehall had the ball for the second half. It was still a very tight game. It says it's going to be interesting to see what happens on this first drive. Well, Whitehall runs a ball back like 70 yards, and then there's a penalty. So and twice, I think, if I'm not mistaken, twice during that drive, they had like a 3rd and 20, and were able to get them both times, and that was really kind of the turning point of the contest.
Yeah.
If I remember right, they had 25 yards in penalties just in that drive, a
believe you're
personal foul, then I think a holding or something. So
Sure.
yeah, they just kept going backwards like 2 plays in a row, but they were able to overcome it. I thought in that fourth quarter, Reavy, Cook, Napier, Russell, and Van Patten really, and like what you said, Scott, really took that game over in the fourth quarter, that big offensive line, and really opened up some holes. And then it was also time-consuming drives. I think that was a game. You start doing games, you try to remember. But I think it was Whitehall had a 9-minute drive to start out that game, and scored 9:03. I think it was off the clock. So yeah, their offense is starting to click.
Yeah, and Van Patten also had a nice pick on a deflection. He's had a great year for them. He's been a guy, especially with you got Ira Jenkins and Grayson Shepard not playing. Now Ira Jenkins dressed Friday. We didn't know if he was going to play. He didn't play, but he dressed and went through the senior night, ceremonies and everything. But that's one to keep an eye on going forward. Is he actually going to get out there?
Yeah. You happen to remember we were standing there on the track before we did the little 20-minute pregame show, and I went, that kid found the weight room, and then you go, that's Ira Jenkins, and I went, oh yeah, it is, isn't it? Just,
Yeah, I don't think he
goodness.
found the weight room. I think he was born in the weight room.
What a specimen he is. Yeah, him and Grayson both. Huge losses to them, but they're still a great team. But boy, to have those two guys.
The
oh,
Nordic
my
nightmare,
goodness.
they call him.
Yeah.
So what about Mike? What are your observations
Well,
of what
first
you
off,
saw?
it's tough for a team like Montague to beat a team with a player named Red Watson.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
I mean that's a name that you just don't forget.
Sure.
Okay, and but it's to me after seeing them playing Game 1 against Kalamazoo United, the maturation process of Stratton. There's so many intangibles when you're talking about playing a sophomore quarterback. Because it's not just his playmaking ability, it's his decision making with the RPOs, things like this, and then it's the presence he commands in a huddle, leading a team, with upperclassmen, how quick they respond to him and want to rally around him. Did I see a lot of him getting pats on the back when he would make a play in Game 1? Not a lot. But as the game went on and as the season's gone on, the more film I watch on him, you see people, they're rallying to him now. So that process of him growing as a leader and as a player and, on that team is developing very well. He's going to be a good one to watch for that. He reminds me, I was telling you, he reminds me watching him play the same mentality as the baseball player that came through.
McLeod, yeah.
Nate.
No, and I've seen that, what you say about the players rallying around him now.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was kind of a quarterback battle there between him and Brody Fogus,
Well,
the senior. And Brody's the guy who stepped in his
Right.
sophomore year when things kind of went south for Whitehall because they had all these injuries piling up. And now,
Right.
but they're really rallying around Kyle.
Well,
And they are rallying. They are supporting him.
I'll tell you this. I remember Nate McLeod, coaching against him. At about the third play of the game, he ran the football around our sideline. And he got about 8 yards and, ran him out of bounds and everything. And I helped pick Nate up, okay? And he looked at me and he said, Coach, your kids are going to have to do a lot better job tackling tonight if they're going to stay in this game. And I said, I know, Nate, I know.
Yeah.
And then you dropped him, or what?
Then I tripped it. Yeah.
I thought that game might hinge back towards Montague and Cooey threw that touchdown pass to Tug Nichols. And I think that tied it at 14 at that point.
It did.
And I thought, okay, is that going to get in Whitehall's head? And credit to Whitehall, it didn't. But I thought the game might turn right then, but it didn't. Kudos to Whitehall, because that could have been a pivotal part right there.
There were moments in that. That was one of them. There was a moment when Whitehall fumbled it right inside the 10 or whatever, and Monty couldn't convert. And there was also a moment where Nate Boley was back for the punt snap, and the snap sailed over his head.
Oh, yeah.
He did a great job just to recover it and dodge a couple guys and get off a pretty good punt to keep some decent field position.
That was a great punt, considering everything that was going on.
Yeah, that he kind of saved him on that too.
Yeah, that got him out to about midfield. That punt
did.
I think. Yeah.
What kind of practice week do you think Montague will have this week? I mean, will that loss make them a better team?
We had Coach Dennett, Justin Dennett, on the coach's corner last night. I asked him that. Now, he was encouraged by the way they responded from the Edwardsburg game, which they took a beating in that, which Edwardsburg does that to a lot of teams. No shame in that. And they responded well. They won a share of the conference title, had a chance to win it outright. Now, how healthy are they right now? That's the question. And then,
but this isn't a typical. This is the rivalry.
It
the
is.
Bridge rivalry. This isn't Edwardsburg. This is something that these kids have to live with the rest of their lives. Okay.
Right.
And so, are they so absorbed? Young kids, 15, 16, 17, 18. Are they so absorbed in that particular loss they can't drop it and move on?
Yeah, I don't think so, Mike. I see what you're saying, and yeah. My main concern is they're going to be playing Portland next week.
Right.
How healthy are they? And Tug Nichols winds up leaving that game. Chase Gow made some great catches. He's dinged up in the game itself. A couple of other players, and so now I'm looking. You're playing a bigger team, a powerhouse, Portland, and you're going to go down there. So that's kind of my concern. As far as getting up for it, I don't think so. I don't think there'll be a what do you call it, a drag,
like a hangover or something from that loss.
I don't think there'll be that.
In Portland, by the way, they beat DeWitt this year, so it's like, wow, that's a pretty big statement.
I think that was the shocker. For me, that was the shocker of the year. Because I talked to Jack Sugars the week before, and he said no one's going to beat DeWitt. And then they lose to Division 5 Portland, and I called him. I went, hey, your crystal ball's not very good.
Right.
He needs to borrow Andrew Johnson's crystal ball they brought on the show here at the beginning of the show, beginning of the season.
Yeah, I think Peterson's the other one that's hurt for Montague.
But I'm hearing he might be coming back here. Is that what you're telling me?
Coach Dennett last night mentioned that on the show that
That
Owen
would be
Peterson, he's
huge.
got a back or spinal type injury, and they didn't know what his prognosis would be for the rest of the season.
We just heard a rumor Jenkins is transferred from Whitehall.
So, but yeah, he sounds like he's going to be back for the playoffs possibly. So
Oh,
that's a
good.
big lift.
Oh, yeah, that is. I wasn't
Yep.
aware of that. So okay.
Then Whitehall plays Reed City. Of course, Reed City, a tough team in that CSAA, the champions of their particular division over there. But when I was talking to Tony Sigmund before this game, we were talking playoffs, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on. I said, hey, what do you think about this new playoff situation? He says, well, it's week 9. He says, we're going to be playing a smaller school, so you wonder about the playoff points. And we said, going in, Montague, if they beat Whitehall beat Portland, I mean, there's a big wish list there. I mean, you're hosting probably for for a while. Whitehall, even going into that game, they've obviously helped their chances beating Montague, but Reed City, I wonder if that's going to kind of haunt them a little bit. Reed City being a very good team, but a smaller team.
It could, because they were already, if Whitehall hadn't won that game against Montague, then you're going in that Reed City game, you're like, man, we obviously got to win this,
Right,
but we're not getting as much because they're a
That's why the
smaller
loser
school.
of that game for the belt, they got a tough opponent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what you're trying to break down here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, or finish your thought. Or,
No, that was it. I mean, they both have tough opponents, and to Mike's
Yeah.
point, you have to. How are they going to recover? And because this is you're effectively starting the playoffs right now.
Right. Exactly. Actually, you could say even last week,
Yeah.
really, the Whitehall
It was that
Montague game
atmosphere.
probably the start of it. Yeah.
But did any of us ever think Whitehall is going to be able to host for 2 or 3 weeks?
It's tough.
Yeah, I haven't thought. I thought they would get in. Earlier in the season, I thought they were really going to have to win out. But I mean, the way this new formula is working out, I mean, there's schools out there that are 3 and 5 that are on the bubble of getting in, I guess. So I never thought Whitehall was going to have to. I never envisioned Whitehall hosting 3 games. I thought they might host 1, and then they're going to be on the road, especially with some of the schools that are out there. They're going to have to match up with.
They might be on the road right away as it looks now. So
The second week of two-a-days, I spent 3 days over in Whitehall's camp, okay? And in talking with them, they definitely expected big things from this team. Right. I mean, even though they had a young quarterback, Tony said this is a very good team here. He felt very confident. Not to the point where I think he expected 3 home games for the playoffs by any means.
Right.
But, I mean, as far as West Michigan Conference champions, and he was very optimistic and very confident that if his kids played, to the level that he thought they were capable of, they could do some.
Yeah.
This is going to be a good year for them.
Yeah, we alluded to it, but when you lose like a Jenkins and a Shepherd, boy, I mean those are 2 non-small losses.
And when I talked to him at the beginning, he'd already lost those kids.
Yeah,
So he was aware that even though they didn't have those 2 kids,
sure.
We still got some pieces to the puzzle that are pretty good.
and unfortunately, that happens
Right.
in a lot of high school football seasons to a lot of teams. Like I can think back to Ravenna a couple years ago when Josh Cox, a really good receiver, got hurt.
Right.
Well, that was the year they lost to Montague in a great overtime game. They beat them in the regular season.
Sure.
They lost a great game in overtime in the district final. But I try to think about that Ravenna team, which I thought was one of 4 or 5 teams that potentially could have won a state title that year in Division 6. If they have Josh Cox, maybe that's a different story. I don't know.
Sure, exactly.
Didn't they lost him early, didn't they?
They did in the opener.
Yeah.
They lost to Hopkins in the opener, but he had like 170 or 150 yards and like 2.5 quarters of play and 3 touchdowns or something like that from a receiver spot.
Yeah, I remember that was a huge loss for them. That's
Yeah.
like he was losing a Drew Collins or Cody Cater or Jamie Potts.
He
or
was
some
an
of that
all-stater for
caliber,
them, yeah.
Right. He was a fine basketball player and wound up blowing his whole basketball season as well. Let's move on to, and we'll start with you, Mike, on this one because I know you guys covered this one. Oak Ridge 43, Ravenna 36. We were getting updates in the beginning about Oak Ridge kind of looked like, it's going to be a one-sided win, and then all of a sudden you start seeing 36-36. Break down that game for us.
Opening kickoff, run back for a touchdown. Less than 2 minutes later, they're up 14-0. Things look real good for homecoming over there for Coach Harger. And then as the game went on, I'm telling you, there was no quit in the Bulldogs over there, and they had some big plays in that game. And again, when you're down, what was it, 36-7 at halftime? The band's playing pretty loud.
Right.
Okay, and often. Okay, and then all of a sudden that Oak Ridge side got real quiet, and that Ravenna side started making some plays and making big plays. And I don't think it was that Oak Ridge was really shooting themselves in the foot, but Ravenna just stepped it up.
Yeah.
It ended up being a great football game. It went right down to the wire. So, an interception to end the game out that Ravenna had thrown, and again, a new offense. Basically, you're looking at the Muskegon connection moving in over there with Ego and Finley and Brent White is up there in the press box yelling and having fun, and but you're seeing a group of kids learning a new offensive system,
Right.
okay, that are used to playing power eye football for the last 40 years, okay. And Scott, you're from that area, You know, so you know.
I didn't play 40 years ago, but yeah.
Well, 39.
Yeah. Okay.
But, you know, I think they're picking the offense up, and it is a speed offense because it fits Muskegon's personnel, real well, and it's just a matter of, tweaking it here and there so that, to fit the skill level of the kids in Ravenna.
I mean, I didn't see the game, but I've seen the kid play before. It seems to fit Hunter Hogan very well because he's been having some just great
Monster
games. And I mean, how good did he look in that game? Obviously, Vanderput for Oak Ridge is an all-state running back, and he's kind of their bell cow, and everyone knows that. And they've got Raymond as well, who returned the kickoff and
Right.
scored the winning touchdown. But how good was Hogan in that game?
He see what caught me initially watching him. I didn't realize he had such good speed. Okay, I know he's a good athlete. Lateral quickness is good. His strength, explosiveness, but his overall speed is what impressed me.
Escapability,
Because,
too.
yeah, when he got open, okay, you weren't going to catch him.
Yeah.
That Oak Ridge had nobody that could catch him, and he did. He got himself in position to be able to turn on the Jets and made some big plays. Great football game. Crowd was going nuts. Crowd was going nuts, and then at the end, Oak Ridge comes back and secures the homecoming win, and
Conference title, too. Piece of
Yeah.
the conference title.
yeah.
Tri-champion.
I think it's great for the conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great for the conference.
Did McCullough play in that game? Thomas McCullough?
Yeah.
Did he? Okay, so he was just out then kind of
Yeah.
for that North Muskegon game
Yeah.
as a precaution.
Yeah, because he was, and I covered the Montague-Ravenna game, and Ravenna was right there in that one, too. Could have won that one. And McCullough, I thought, was a difference in that game offensively. But I know he got all league defensive back, all conference, and he's just a good-looking prospect, but I know he's been battling an ankle injury, so I don't know how healthy he is right now.
And I'm going to go back to my Oak Ridge being Jekyll and Hyde. And I'd like to sit down after the season and talk to Kerry Harger about that. Is that the right analogy of this year's team? Because, boy, they had the big lead, and you're thinking, wow, this is the Oak Ridge that you and I seen in Whitehall. I think that you were at that game. And the dismantling of Whitehall, and then they're just like this.
And Hart put up, more points than you would think a Hart team would put up against them too.
Yeah,
so
so-
you're starting to kind of wonder what's going on over there a little bit. We have Ravenna's going to be playing Central Montcalm this week. We're going to cover that one on the Greater Muskegon Sports Network. Oak Ridge is going to be taking on Muskegon Catholic Central. I think you're on that one, Mike, with WLCS. That's going to be a big battle. It's going to be fun to check.
What's that game going to come down to?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it, okay, let's look at the matchups in that game. What's it going to come down to?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be the weather because they're playing on turf.
No, and this is kind of Captain Obvious, but seems like it's going to come between the tackles. I mean, what are both those teams, what do they excel at? What do they hang their hat on?
I've not
It's line
seen
play.
Muskegon Catholic play this year live.
Yeah, nor have I.
Okay,
Right.
but knowing what they do offensively and defensively, I'm curious to see the matchups in the trenches.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, I know both those coaches, they like to establish that area. They move the line of scrimmage and control that area. So it'll be interesting to see the kind of the game plan they come out with. Especially, what are you thinking if you're Muskegon Catholic watching that second half of film on Oak Ridge?
Yeah.
I think it may come down to Oak Ridge's offensive line, which is 6'3", 268 pounds. I don't know if Catholic has seen a line that big yet this year. That's a big offensive line, and at times they are dominant.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. That'll be our CatchMark game of the week,
Well-
so I'll be there covering it.
I'll tell you who I was really impressed with that game was Ethan Ezra,
Oh, Ethan Joseph.
or Joseph, that's it.
Yep.
What a specimen.
Yeah, he is.
What a specimen. I mean, he is a football player.
He's a two-way first team all-league selection, and you guys were covering the game, I believe, as well.
Yeah,
and
he
I
has
was there when Whitehall played Oak Ridge when he had
He went for a
pressured
bat.
the quarterback
Yeah.
all in one motion, pressured him, and snagged the ball and ran it back, took it to the house.
Yeah, went for a block and turned into an interception.
Yep.
Yeah, 6'7", 245. Specimen.
Yeah.
He's a big boy. Yeah, I think the Oak Ridge is going to just have to kind of solve that puzzle about where the low, for whatever reason it is, where they kind of let teams hang around a little bit. Eventually, especially as they head in the playoffs, that's going to be a tough situation for
And see,
them.
the thing too, when you talk about players like that, you really, as a fan, okay, or as an announcer or broadcaster, you don't know those kids mentally what they're all about.
Right,
Okay, and the other thing you look at is when the potential that they have when you see them play on Friday night, you want to equate that to what are they going to come out with, and how is their motor?
Sure.
How consistent is their motor? You know, is it running when they step on that field? Is it running high, or you know, the mentality of the athlete?
And Joseph, he's one of those gentle giants. Interviewing him a couple times, he's really soft spoken, but man,
Well, see, and that's
he's
why
loud on the field though.
you always ask when you're talking to a high school athlete, always ask them this: do you like to win? You know, do you want to win or do you hate to lose? Okay, see how they answer that. You want to win or do you hate to lose? And see how they answer that, because it says a lot about their personality.
The best,
You know.
usually the best competitors are in the hate to lose category.
Those are the type A. Those are the type A. Okay, but you got to see a motor on a kid when he steps on that field. His intensity level is consistent, and he is going. You know, the average football player is 3.5 seconds.
Right.
Okay, is that motor going for 3.5 seconds at 100 miles an hour?
Sure.
That's what you want to see. Or if the ball's away from him, does he slow down and jog?
Right. Going to have to move on to the Lake State here so we get to our playoffs.
Why?
Muskegon Catholic knocking off Centerville by the score of 24 to 16. We knew Centerville was going to be a tough team coming in. Catholic hangs on and picks up the win.
And that was not just a great game. I mean, it was a fantastic finish. That was where 6 seconds left. It's tied. I mean, Catholic goes up 16-0. Centerville comes charging back, ties it up with 2 touchdowns, 2 two-point conversions, and then so Catholic's driving the field and they throw up I wouldn't call it a prayer, but Elliot Riegler threw it up, and Sam Convertini pulled it down a 26-yard touchdown with 6 seconds left, and they ended up winning by 8. But that was a great win, great test for both teams. But I know we kind of did overlook, if we could just kind of go back real quick, I want to mention the Hart-Shelby game just because it's such a long-standing rivalry.
Right.
And in fact, I think with Hart's 70-12 win, that ties the all-time series at like 56, 56, and 4 or something like that. So it just shows over the long haul how that series has gone back and forth.
Sure, exactly.
And you got Portier and Tanis, first-year coaches up there.
Right.
And actually, I saw where Chance Alvesteffer, you know, has had a great year for the Hart team up there,
He
the
has.
Pirates, and he was selected on the All-Conference I believe, as a kick returner.
He was, yeah.
You know, so you know he's a phenomenal wrestler. I don't know what he's got, a couple hundred wins already, and you know everything. So yeah, it's great to see. That's a big rivalry game up there.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it's good. And like Joe's going to do a fine job with Hart as well. Cal, your thought on
good,
Cap? Okay, let's move on to Crystal, Carson City Crystal taking it to Muskegon Heights, 41-14. And boy, Muskegon Heights has kind of been a little bit rudderless ever since their loss to Ludington. And you know, you don't want to be spinning your wheels heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, and they're going to have to try to regroup this week because they're still in position to get in the playoffs, but they've got McBain this week, and that's no picnic either for them. So that's a Saturday game that they have at home against McBain. But yeah, it kind of got away from them at Carson City Crystal, but Carson City Crystal has put together a nice program in the last couple of years with Tim Swore there, the former North Point Christian coach who, you know, the West Michigan Conference teams have seen him before. Ravenna's faced him, and so has Montague. So.
Sure.
Yeah, I was hoping the Heights was going to end their season more on an upswing than a kind of a downswing, and right now it's kind of on that downswing. So if they could pick off a win on Saturday, get in the playoffs, and then have a little bit of success, I think that would really help that program going forward.
Okay, let's move on to the playoffs scenarios, and obviously you're talking still. You got another week going, and then the playoffs, so anything can happen here. But let's start out. Scott in Division II, Region 1, District 2. That, of course, features in our area, Mona Shores, but it looks like it's kind of shaping up in that particular bracket. Caledonia, Byron Center, Forest Hill Central, Mona Shores in that one.
Yeah, let me preface this too by saying that all these projections are coming from Snooze to You, a guy that's a friend of the show, but also a friend to a lot of people. No one crunches numbers and looks at this and is more accurate in the projections than he is. And so we're basing a lot of what we're talking about tonight on the playoff outlook on what he has projected through Week 8. So, you know,
he married into money. You know what I mean? If he's got that much time, he married into money.
So they, you know, talk about Mona Shores.
Sure.
They right now they're projected to play Forest Hill Central, which those teams have had some good, really intense games. Actually, last year was one of them where it was decided on the final play of the game, basically, and time ran out on
Right.
Forces Central, and a bit of a debate whether the time really ran out or not.
Yeah.
But there's a little history there, we'll just say that, between
Sure.
those schools, and Caledonia and Byron Center also in that projected district, and Caledonia is having a great season as well, and, they're 7-1, Forces Central 7-1, Shores 6-2, so, I think that district would be wide open.
Yeah, Shores looks like as of right now, if the playoffs right now with that lineup, Shores would be on the road at Forest Hill Central playing them. Caledonia be taking on Byron Center, and you know something about Caledonia's head coach. Used to coach
Well,
over at
yeah,
Zebulon East.
and Whitney Bell, their defensive coordinator, he played up at Ferris and went up to Canada and played. Good friend, I worked with him, and I think they got one of the best quarterback coaches in the state. Ron Van Ryswick working with the quarterback over there, and that quarterback is phenomenal. They took Rockford right to the wire, and to me, that's a team to beat. That's a team to beat.
Yeah, your thoughts?
I would be a little bit afraid of Caledonia at some point here coming down the stretch. They seem to be playing very well, and they're smacking people in the mouth from what you hear.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember who the young man was that was the running back for Caledonia last year. He was just a beast. His name's slipping my mind, but he gave Shores all kinds of problems. That game went right down the wire, and it was one of those games where it was kind of a duel between him and Brady Rose, and Brady Rose, just like he did basically every other week, got the best of him by the end of the night. But
Sure.
yeah, they had quite a battle even last year before.
They are an extremely balanced team, and the running back this year, his father's the new AD over there. And it's interesting because he got about 3 or 4 kids that moved into that district that have stepped in and helped him. And the freshman team currently for Caledonia is undefeated, and the JVs are doing well over there too. So, Derek's they've given him the opportunity to develop a program over there, and he's so far got all the pieces to the puzzle in place.
Sure. And then moving on to Division III, of course, the Muskegon Big Reds. That's a division that they're playing in. It looks like, according to Snooze, Muskegon, Northview, Cedar Springs, Coopersville. Scott.
Yeah, that's it's always interesting to look at these matchups, and I think the thing that jumps out at me is Coopersville is like, whoa, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Why are we Division III? Come on, come on. What's this enrollment thing? We're not. We belong with the Spring Lakes and all those teams. Why do we got to be with Muskegon? So
I have a friend who lives in Coopersville and an avid athlete. He was an athlete, played college baseball. And he's like, oh man, we're having a great season. We're having a great season. Well, where are you guys? What division are you guys in now? I asked him at the beginning of the season. He said 3, and I just shook my head and know it. You can have all the great season you want, but you're going to meet Muskegon relatively shortly, and you want nothing to do with them.
Well, they might not even get to that point because if they play Cedar Springs, that's no picnic either.
No, it's not.
So they'd have their hands full with them
Which
for
one would
starters.
be a better match for Muskegon? Which one would give Muskegon
Of those
a better
two,
game?
Cedar.
Cedar would give them a better
But-
game, I think.
I think Cedar, but Shane's never lost to a Wing T team, and Cedar's a Wing T team, I believe. So, but Cedar's a good football club.
They are.
And you can't teach speed. Muskegon certainly has the speed. So
The interesting thing about this projection too, by the way, is Division III, because everyone wants to know when are they going to play DeWitt.
right.
Yeah.
And according to this projection, it would be in the regional as opposed to the semifinal, which has been the semifinal the last couple of years. And
Sure.
DeWitt, of course, being the defending state champion, and they beat Muskegon in a tight one last year, 14-0. But we could see another one again, but that would actually be at DeWitt. Looks like.
Right.
Yeah, that was my next question. Where? I know it looks like DeWitt, but well, if you could get DeWitt at Muskegon, changes that whole dynamic.
Yeah, they've got DeWitt, according to playoff point average, they're comfortably ahead of Muskegon in terms of their playoff average. So if all things play out like we think they might, then that one would be played at DeWitt.
Yeah, Muskegon would be home for if they were fortunate enough to get 2 playoff games here against these particular teams. They would host both of those games, which is kind of neat now that they got the new turf. All those years of going to Grand Haven, they finally get a chance to actually have some playoff games at Hackley Stadium.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful place. They did a great job with that stadium.
Really.
Well,
have.
and again, Miles Walton stepping in at quarterback, and you have a new offensive coordinator who was coaching the secondary last year. So those things in itself, and again, a few other new coaches in that staff. So the development of that program is doing pretty well this year.
Moving on to Division IV, and we have a couple of teams in Region 1, Division 2. We have Whitehall and Fruitport in there, also Unity Christian and Spring Lake, and I think some fireworks in that particular region and division.
Yeah, according to these projections, if these play out, the game I'm really intrigued by is Whitehall Spring Lake. I've seen both teams, seen Whitehall multiple times, but saw Spring Lake against Unity, which, that one got away from them, but that happens a lot when you're playing
That's a
Unity.
fan favorite, though.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right. So that would be a great matchup, I think. And then on the other side of that, you'd have Unity and Fruitport, which could, by the way, happen 2 weeks in a row if this projection plays out, because Fruitport hosts Unity this week.
Right.
If they played them again, they'd be going to Unity next week.
Oh, joy, right?
Yeah.
Any thoughts from you guys on that?
Well, right now I think just hand Unity the title unless COVID gets them. They are just a phenomenal team, but you still got to show up on Friday night, and anything can happen in 48 minutes.
And there's
So that's why you
Edwardsburg on
play
that
the
side
game.
of the bracket. The Eddies
Yeah.
are there. Chelsea's actually ranked number 1 in the state. So,
some
who knows?
challenges,
There's
to say the least.
some
2 weeks
challenges
in a
out there.
row? Wow, it sounds a lot like my first marriage.
Division 5 teams we're watching here. Division 5, Region 2 of District 1, Oak Ridge taking on Grant according to the projections, Tri-County and Big Rapids. Scott.
Yeah, about Grant, it was brought to us by another friend of the show, Eric Greiner from Montague. When you're looking at Week 9 matchups, it might not look like it by record, but Grant hosts, I think they're hosting Kent City. I know they're playing Kent City, and it sounds like that could be effectively a playoff or a play-in game.
Okay.
It sounds like whoever wins that has a really good shot of getting in, and whoever loses it might not get in. And so, but Grant, yeah, they're going to have their hands full with Oak Ridge if that's the matchup. So the other side of that's Tri-County and Big Rapids.
Yeah, Grant hasn't fared well against Oak Ridge at all. I mean, I think the last time when Darren Garrity was there, at least held him at not being a running clock.
Right.
I think it was just 28-0. But you're right. I think it is going to be a play-in game here for both schools. That, for Kent City, Morley would not play them because if Morley didn't play them, they won that OK Silver. So Morley would not play them, and which gives the Silver Conference title to Morley. And I think some people around Kent City may be a little bit bitter about that. They couldn't work out a game to play that. So,
Any thoughts, Mike?
No.
The bottom half of that bracket, too, that's where it gets really interesting if you're looking at that region, because it has Grand Rapids Catholic Central and West Catholic and Comstock Park, which is, by the way, undefeated and coached by Shelby native and former Urbana coach Doug Samuels. So there's a lot of interesting storylines that could be developing here in the next few weeks.
Division 6, Big Giant, Lansing Catholics in there. They're playing, according to the projections, Ovid Elsie and Montague Central Montcalm, a possibility there, Scott.
Yeah, and like you said, you guys are covering Central Montcalm at Urbana this week,
we get a
so
chance to look
you get
at
a little
that.
look at them. And
Right.
yeah, I think that would be a good matchup for Montague, and they'd get that one at home if that's how it plays out.
Right.
And then, unfortunately, though, if you're in that district with Lansing Catholic, that's probably one of the teams to beat in Division 6. And then, by the way, Reed City has fallen down to Division 6 this year too, so
Okay.
that's a team that maybe you could see down the road if things go well for you. But I mean, it all depends on the matchups. I think it always does, and how that playoff road looks. And I think that's going to be key for Montague.
Yeah, along with the health of Montague.
the health and the matchup, and try to maybe get away from Lansing Catholic out somehow, somewhere.
Yeah. Well, maybe they can give them wrong directions or something like that.
Maybe ship them north.
Well, and Rick Hickman Jr. is playing quarterback over there for Reed City, and tough guy to stop.
I think
Dude's
he's
legs
6.
were- yeah.
I think he's 6 now, isn't he?
Yeah. He's a little guy, but he's wiry.
He's fiery.
Yeah.
He's wiry.
He's a 6-year senior.
Yeah. Division 7, you got Muskegon Catholic, North Muskegon, Delton Kellogg, and Ravenna, it looks like, Scott.
Yeah, that's Division 7's really, really interesting here, and it's changed so much this projection because last week you looked at it and it was in one district. It was Ravenna Catholic playing and Puamo and Ithaca playing all in one district. That's the district of death basically. I mean,
Yeah.
Sure.
no matter where you look, there's no easy games anywhere in that. Like it's all you're gonna have a tough game no matter what. But now they've kind of separated things out. So Catholic would be playing North Muskegon, and Delton and Ravenna would be going at it. But North Muskegon at 3-5, then this is kind of illustrates the new playoff format because they're 3-5 and they got a chance to get in. They play Ludington this week. Now I don't know this. I don't have this on authority, but I know for sure that James Young is hurt and out for the season, their quarterback. But I heard that Belmonte may have gotten injured too.
Oh, man.
If that's the case, that really hurts.
I seen Belmonte in a picture on Facebook, and his arm's in a sling.
That's too bad because he had Tommy John surgery last year because he hurt his elbow.
Wait a minute, hold on, back up. I seen that, but you know what? That picture was from the summer.
Okay.
So I got to back up on that.
But he came back for basketball though for last year, so he was
Yeah.
back playing. But I don't have that on authority. I just heard that maybe he might be injured. I don't know that for sure. And if so, I hope not.
Yeah.
You never like to see
Oh, yeah,
kids
you
get
don't
hurt,
see- no.
Right.
and for their team too. That's a tough one to overcome because those are two great players for them, and they're playing Ludington, which is a game I think that they have a reasonable shot in. So, and then of course, and then we could get another potential if you look further down the road, maybe a Ravenna Catholic kind of redux again.
Back to the future kind
Yeah.
of thing. All right. North Muskegon, Mike, I mean, we've always talked about them being a very tough, very scrappy team, but boy, just don't have a lot of bodies. And when you start getting people hurt, I mean, all of a sudden you're looking at the assistant coach and the water boy to go in.
The thing that, and I don't care whether it's Division 8 or 1, you take their starting quarterback out,
Yeah.
okay, and that's a whole different team, okay? And you can look at every team that we're talking about here, and when you take that number 1 quarterback out, it's, you lose an Ira Jenkins and, guys like that, you can plug somebody in, you know what I mean?
Right.
Change the scheme a little bit. But when it comes to that quarterback position, okay, not a lot of people have got the quality backup at that position. He doesn't get the reps in practice, and it's just tough. So even though he's a sophomore, he has still developed, and there's a lot of upside to that young man.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
a lot of upside to him.
Yeah, he's going to be a great player. He's already pretty dang good as it is.
And he was really, I was impressed with him when I watched him this year.
Yeah.
But my point is that not a lot of high school teams have the depth, okay, anymore that they had 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And when you pull that quarterback out, you're talking about a whole different monster now.
Yeah, and we always talk before we move on to Division 8. I know we got to get out of here pretty quick, but we always talk about having our teams avoid one another. Being able to be in different divisions or whatever the case is. Division 7, we're kind of got that where we're gonna ram heads here. Muskegon Catholic's in there, North Muskegon's in there, Ravenna. All of a sudden, out of all the divisions, it looks like that's going to be the one where you're going to have some collateral damage. They're going to take each other out to a certain extent.
That's true. And then in that region, on that side of the bracket with Catholic, North Muskegon, or Ravenna, whoever comes out of that, you're looking Lumen Christi right in the face. So that's no picnic there either.
Right. Go ahead.
Isn't it funny that you sit here the week before and you have the projections based on who's going to win on Friday night, and then the team you think, this team's going to win, so they're going to be with these 3 teams, and it's like locked in. And Snooze is phenomenal at it. Just I'll give him all the credit in the world. But it's almost like the MHSAA sits back there and says,
Yeah. not
all
so
right,
fast.
boys, you guys think you got this going on. We're going to send you over here. And then
Yeah.
everybody's going, how did that happen?
Yeah.
It seems like that happens every year, the MHSAA. This kind of throws a
We always
monkey
talk
wrench
about the
in it.
buses passing one. Like,
Yeah.
wait, we're going south. You're going north. I mean, it's always
I think
so
that too.
Snooze is not in charge of the parent,
right.
obviously.
No, but Cal's right because I've thought the same thing. And by the way, that show is this Sunday, 5:30 on Bally Sports Detroit, and so we'll
5:30?
know for sure. It's 5:30. Yeah, a 5:30 start on that.
7, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's 5:30. So maybe there's I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe there's a Red Wings game or something going
That's
on
a new
after that.
playoff format.
Yeah.
Everyone at the same time.
Exactly.
Quick question for you. Were you able to sit in on the West Michigan Conference all-conference selection?
No, I'm not part of that. I got the results sent to me.
Yeah,
Sunday,
I just thought
but
maybe they might let you come in, but
No, heck no, they don't want. They already have a hard enough time picking that team. They don't need me around to mess
No,
with
but I
even
just
more.
thought they'd let you just come in and sit in and see what it's like.
Be a fly on the wall.
Be the
Yeah,
fly on the
that'd be
wall.
interesting.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
would be.
I know he's sat on those before.
They let me in the room a couple times.
Before they realize you were in there.
Yeah. They're like, we'll call you and give you the results.
Don't call us. We'll call you.
Thanks, fellas.
Let's move on to Division 8 here as we get set to wrap up. Muskegon Heights White Cloud. There's a name we don't see in the playoffs a whole lot, but they've for a couple of years they didn't even have a football program, and to be able to come back from that, kudos to the Indians and their fine staff. And they got Saugatuck. There's a name that's been in the playoffs for a few years, and Holton. The Holton Red Devils.
They're playing for a winning record Friday night.
Yeah, kind of an intriguing lot there, Scott.
That is, and I mean, last week the projection was Heights and Holton, which I thought also would be really interesting.
Right.
So, yeah, and I'm not sure what to make of it if it was Saugatuck Holton. Saugatuck's had some really good teams in recent years. I'm not sure if they're quite at that level anymore.
Right.
And Holton's really rebounded nicely since that season opening loss to Hart. They've played some pretty good football under first year coach Alex Smith, so they're showing some signs of encouragement. And their quarterback's had a great year too.
Sure. Saugatuck used to have a little history with that gang over there, didn't you, Cal?
Yeah, I haven't here the last few years, but for quite a few winters, we ended up at spring break together. Just out of the when we were in the same hotel, and
The coach of
Dunn.
Saugatuck, Bill
Bill
Dunn.
Dunn,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
great guy. Had some great boys who were wonderful, wonderful athletes, and he had a West Ottawa shirt on at that point. He had been the coach of West Ottawa, but previously, what was the head coach of Saugatuck, and I went, "Hey, you're from West Michigan," and we got to chatting, and we always ended up having great football conversations throughout the week, and so yeah, pretty cool story about that, but to share it for later.
Yep.
And Mike, it's like Holton, neat little. I mean, this is kind of the division of neat stories. You had Heights that didn't even have a football team last year. They're trying to stay alive and get going, get in the playoffs. White Cloud, who again had history of having the football program kind of drop out on them and a lot of losing seasons, but maybe get back in there again. Saugatuck has a history, and Holton, they had that magical run here 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep.
And they're trying to get back with Alex Smith. So
How about their JV program 2 weeks ago? They played an 8-man game.
yeah,
Their JV won an 8-man football game that they got involved with because they had a cancellation of with Hesperia, so they scheduled the game for 8-man football and they won.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's where we're headed.
we are. Yeah.
Oh, Menden's a 8-player now. Menden, of all schools, if you think a team's going to hold on and hold on and hold on and
Well-
try to preserve that, they're 8-player now.
Holton has 20 male athletes, or 20 males in their senior class. 12 of them are playing football.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't afford to have a male and not involved in a sport.
And
That's for sure.
and I said, where are the other 8? Get them out,
Yeah.
Look at the low numbers Montague's been having for football. And these are teams that are going to make a playoff run and possibly win a title like last year. And they don't have a lot of kids out. They only had 6 or 7 kids on the sideline the other night, where Whitehall had this plethora of guys. What's going on with that? It's just like, Montague might be the first team to go to the 8-man football.
And-
They can't increase their number.
Yeah, and Ravenna didn't have a JV this year. Doesn't have a JV this year, so and that's been a traditionally strong program too. So
Yeah.
I mean, talking to Justin Ego, he thinks it's maybe a 1-year thing that the junior class is light on male students, and they're just not getting a lot of numbers from that right now. But it's a little concerning when you're looking at the future and you see that.
That's a whole different show.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother
really
show.
is.
The other thing that's going to be interesting is the playoff format. Okay, I don't like it. I never have from day one, and I'm very vocal about that. I don't think it's good for high school football, but it'll be interesting to see how it's looked upon after this season, and if any changes are going to be made. Okay, down the road.
So what do you want to see?
Well, again, it's a whole nother 15 minutes, but
Right.
basically what you're doing is you're taking the middlemen who might have one out of, if they have one season out of every 4 that is good, based on their schedule, they might not get in the playoffs.
Right.
So those kids now, the trickle-down effect is if a school like Hart, if a school like Hesperia, Shelby, they have a good athlete, okay, he's going to exercise school of choice and try and get in and play with some better competition,
Right.
okay, and get into playoffs. And so I just don't think that, when you tell a school, who's going to want to schedule a school like Hart and Shelby on their schedule?
Right.
What AD is going to call them and say, hey, we'd like to get you on the schedule, knowing that there's bonus points in your
Sure.
schedule,
Sure.
for who you play.
Right.
Nobody's going to want to schedule these people.
Right.
So you're taking them, an opportunity that, hey, if we got a good group of kids that come through, like Ravenna had when Doug Samuels was over there, you got a great group of kids like that, you know what, we can make a serious run. But you know what? If they don't do that, nobody's going to want to schedule them for the non-conference games.
That's right.
The other thing you're going to see is some of these schools are going to bail from their conference and go independent in scheduling. So what do you do?
Yeah.
So what do you do? Well, maybe we could drop week 9 like we did last year, make that the first round of the playoffs, let everybody in. Maybe we'll say we go back to the 6-win thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But right now, the way it's set, you're telling 60 to 70% of the high schools in the state of Michigan,
Yeah.
you're not going to make it. You can have 8 wins.
Yeah.
Nobody, it's just you're not going to get the points you need.
Kind of the opposite effect of
Yep.
the real
And
good teams.
maybe
not
I'm
being able to
wrong.
find games.
Maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, you make
You
some,
know,
you
I
make some
hope
good
I am,
points.
but again, I think it's going to trickle down effect when you're telling kids, you're in the lower tier of the West Michigan Conference. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's going to be pretty tough to get the playoff points needed to get in the playoff.
Sure. No, that's all. All grist for the mill. That's for sure. Like you say, it's a whole nother show, and maybe someday we'll have that show here once things spread out a little bit. Well, I'll tell you what. On the clock on the wall, Jesse's been more than patient with us. Want to thank him for being our engineer here today, and want to thank Mike for joining us.
And
Great
this
seeing you
was your bicentennial moment.
Cal and Ed Scott. On behalf of everybody here, I'm John Russell. Have yourself a great evening, everyone.